This is Narratives in Black, and I'm your host, Amanda Shea. And in part one, Curtis Santos shared how the Boston Lesbi Gay Urban Foundation became a lifeline for queer people of color, creating spaces rooted in love, joy, and self-acceptance. Today, in part two, we explore the personal stories behind that mission, the resilience it takes to keep pushing forward, and Curtis's vision for the next chapter of Blue and Boston Black Pride. Let's jump back into it with Curtis Santos.
Is there anybody in your family that you can point to, or maybe a couple people, maybe it's more than one person, that really showed you what leadership was really founded on? Like somebody that you look up to and you're like, this is where I get this from. Anybody in particular that pops up, or people?
My mom, I would say her first, because she always showed the resilience and the strength as a leader. Her being the oldest of all her siblings.
How many?
She has three other siblings.
Oh, wow.
And her being the eldest of all those siblings, she had a leadership quality of her that was undefined, right? And still today, she doesn't even know how much power she has. And so I think it started with her, and her making me feel like you got it. You don't have to question yourself. You have what it takes to get there. She used to always say, "Honey, go out there and work and make it happen." And so that right there is like a leadership quality already when someone is saying, "Go make it work and happen." Or she used to say, when you get your check, "Give me $20, And I'm like, "Why you want my $20? She used to be like, "Because you need to learn how to save, or because you need to learn how to pay bills, And she's like, "Eventually you're gonna ask me for that $20 anyway."
Right. So I'm gonna just give you your own money back.
Yeah. So I think those different encounters really shaped my view on leadership. But beyond that, I also would say there are community members who really gave me put that battery in my back and said, "Go ahead, you got it." I think of my mentor, Bill Baxter, who has passed away recently, who really was a Boston police officer who worked at Beat 2 police station and really helped shape who I am today. I didn't have a father in the household, right? My uncles and everybody was doing 20 years in prison they did years, our name ring bells, basically, and so I had needed another figure, and I think Bill Baxter, being one of them, really helped shape me. And I would say Cedric Dennis, another person who worked with YPP, who really shaped my future of saying, "You got this." He also be like, "What's up? You got it right." I'm like, "Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah," you know what I mean? So like that encouragement. And then lastly, I would say. Brenda James, she's another officer. We work with police officers at YPP, obviously.
It's giving cops.
Yeah. listen. And so Brenda James, y'all know y'all turn the AC off? It's hot. So Brenda James, I'm gonna bring it back.
You're having a good time. You're having a good time.
I'm gonna bring it back. So Brenda James was another officer, and with her, like I remember going to Madison Park and doing culinary arts at Madison, and we was in a room and it was like, "Everybody, let me say what you want to be when you grow up." And me, I'm like, "My name is Curtis and I want to be a chef." And everybody was like, "Oh, a chef?" And then I remember Brenda saying to the group, "Well, I want him to be my man if he was a chef because he could cook me up a dinner." And it changed the narrative around cooking and men being chefs, and she's like, "He could cook me dinner, so I'll choose him as a man before anybody." And I think that right there empowered me too, to be like, "Yeah, I could be a chef." Yeah, I got it. But it was also just her basically saying, "Lead your path and stay in it." Basically, that's what I heard her say.
If that's what you want to do, then name that, stamp on business. Yeah. But you may not be a chef as far as cooking, but you out here cooking
it
up
up.
Programs.
So
talk about it. I love the mentorship program. I also love the fact that you name that you have mentors. Who are some people in the community right now that if you were in a situation, who would you go to and be like, "Ayo, I need help"? Who would you call?
I think about my pop. I never had a gay father. Let's start there. When I was growing up, people were like, I got a gay father, I got a gay father. I'm like, bitch, I don't got no gay father. Ain't no gay father live here, you know? I'm all around straight man, like, you know?
Yeah.
But getting into this work in 2019, and someone introduced me to Paul Glass. And
Legend.
shout out to Pop. And Paul Glass, for some reason, it was like a glue to him. And I was just like, can I call you my dad? He was like, sure. But I never had a gay father. And so I think when I'm in situations, I always turn to Paul. And I'd be like, I'm gonna get emotional. I always be like, tell me the truth. I can live with it, you know? But tell me the truth of how do I navigate certain things. And he always was that honest person, like, honey, I'm gonna tell you what the fuck it is.
That's Paul's whole
You know,
mentality.
And I really appreciate how honest he was, because I never worked in queer space before, right? I always worked with heterosexual, well, multifaceted people. I wouldn't even say a certain category in genders, but I always worked in like spaces where it's like working with everybody, a collective of folks. And so when I got into the space of working, like focused on my godly duties on queer community, I didn't know how to connect, you know? And I never had a queer community that I felt safe in. And so I created it, you know? And so when I was actually creating it and talking to Paul, he was like, you got it. He's like, whatever you're doing, honey, you're doing it. He's like, they haven't did this in so long. You're doing something that folks have not did, and you're doing it, you know. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, I've been here a long time, and what you're doing has never been done. Continue it. And I'm like, I don't know what it means, God, but I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna keep on fighting a good fight. But that's the encouragement words I always hear from people. Even I think about Barry Callis, right? Thank you to Amir for introducing me to Barry. But I think about him, he always be like, Curtis, you're doing something that folks we haven't seen since the 80s. Like how you're doing like grassroots organizing, we haven't seen that since the 80s. Do it. You're doing something. And so I think of who I lean to, like to answer your question, Paul Glass is one. And my cousin Cindy Diggs. I would say my cousin Cindy Diggs. And I thank her out loud, Cindy Diggs, because
OG, triple OG in the community.
yeah, and she was like there when I was younger, and she was teaching me how to be a leader too. Like I was, Peace Boston, listen, I was there all the time. She was like, cousin, pop in, let's do this, let's do this. So she showed me my leadership skills too, but I thank her because she keeps me accountable. She keeps me accountable. And what I mean by that is that when I'm looking to crash out, like on people, like on social media or whatever,
Listen.
she pulls me back, she'll see it, and she'll call me, take that ish down. And I'm like, no. She's like, take it down because that's how you ruin your reputation. And so it's scary a little bit.
Talk about it.
It's scary, I would say, because when you're a leader, everyone look up to you to lead, but they don't look up to you to speak your truth sometimes, right? And so sometimes as a leader, you have to hold back so much, y'all. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I love you. No, let it out. Release it.
As a leader, I hate y'all.
We love you, though. Come on with it.
As a leader, you have to hold back so much. And it's times where you're like, I'm ready to go home, go ham on you.
Yeah.
And I have to always say to myself, you're the reflection of others. And if you go ham, people's gonna think it's okay to go ham too.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes my project side brain be like, go hard. And then my other side of the brain be like, it's all right. Your time's gonna come. And so I always say to myself, child, when I write my memoir, they're gonna hear it. Because as a leader, you have to have emotional intelligence, right? As a leader, you can't be reactive, right? As a leader, you have to have this poise of you of like, no, I know what I'm doing. And as a leader, you do make mistakes.
Yes.
You know, you do make mistakes. And I think that sometimes those mistakes sometimes will drag you, right? And so as a leader for me, it's hard to like call someone out, right? And just like, I'm just gonna call you out and this it is what it is because I want everybody to win. And if you want everybody to win, you don't call people out. You call them in, And so it's really hard. It's really hard. Anyways.
If you want people to win, you can't call them out, you have to call them in. That's definitely going to be a bar out of this entire interview. But also, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your vulnerability because you're absolutely right. Okay, like I felt that in my spirit. Amir, get him some
I got tissue right here.
Oh, okay. I'm like, girl,
Yeah, I have
you over
tissue.
here watching him cry?
I have tissue. No, and I think that's the reality of being a leader, right? I think that, shout out to Keisha, again, my deputy director, because she crashes out,
Listen.
She crashes out, and I have to be the one to be like, take it down, bring it back. She's like, no, it's time that they hear what we got to say. I said, you know what? You crash out, let me be your protector. Because what she's saying is not wrong.
No, but it's your delivery sometimes.
Right.
Half the time it's never what you're saying, it's how you're saying
Right.
it. But I feel that frustration and that aggravation and what you just displayed and what you named. It's true. As a leader, you are expected to be poised at all times, to almost be like Teflon.
Yeah, it is.
Like things they're not supposed to
affect you,
but they do because as much as this is about community, it is very much wrapped in business too.
It is.
And it's personal.
It is.
The personal is political.
It
I don't
is.
care what
It is.
anybody
It is.
says.
It is.
The personal is political.
It is.
And for us, especially being seen in these moments, it's hard when you have to deal with people because you're not going to satisfy everybody first and foremost.
And not to cut you off, that's something I'm trying to teach our Black Pride Committee members, right? I think that we have this thing of wanting to make everyone happy.
You
right?
can't.
And you cannot,
It's
right?
impossible.
And I always say to folks, like I had a call with my team recently, and I said, that sometimes you have to make executive decisions and deal with it and live with it, because sometimes people are like, well, I want all these people to be a part of. I'm like, honey, you can't. You have to say, honey, you're cut, you're cut, you're cut, you're cut. See you again next year.
Right.
Because I think as Black folks, we have a hard time saying no to people, right? We have a hard time. So you want everyone to be a part of.
Absolutely.
But as what I'm learning as a director, executive director, founder, I'm learning that, honey, some things just have to just get cut. And I just have to live with it.
It's not personal,
It's not.
but it can feel personal, especially when people can stop you in the middle of the street or come to one of your events and try to
come
cuss
at you.
out.
Yeah. Curtis, you da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it's hard. I think that's probably one of the biggest things out of everybody who's been in this chair. They have named that. Where you can't satisfy everybody, but sometimes it is hard to make those executive decisions because you know that it's going to be hard on the person that you may have to make that decision upon. It's not a reflection of them by any means. You still want them to be a part of things,
Still
but
win.
there's a divine timing. And one person that we had on season 1 that I felt like described this, so if y'all are not subscribed to Narratives in Black, now is the time to go back and run those episodes back, was Kat Morris.
Kat, I love Kat. Shout out to Kat.
She's the best, and anybody that I speak to that is in leadership positions always says that they love her because they understand.
She's straightforward.
Straight shooter.
Yeah.
She doesn't sugarcoat, but she also there's a way of consideration and care.
She's like a mama, She
is.
Like she just wraps you around.
She really and has gives the best hugs, by the way. Clock it. Best hugs in the city. I feel like, she spoke about this too, where it's like you have to be okay. You have to talk to God. You have to talk to people that you are in close communication with.
You do.
And stay grounded in that.
You do.
And understand that leadership doesn't always necessarily mean it's always sugar and flowers and candy. Because it's not. You have to balance.
Yes.
And when you're known in the community, because you are known.
Yes.
Every time Blue comes up, you're the first name. Keisha, y'all two together are known for the things that you are doing. It's really hard to navigate that when you're walking into space and you don't know if somebody's going to be mad or somebody's going to have an emotional outburst on you.
Right.
That is a real thing.
I think I think for Keisha and myself, I think that, we always say to folks, you know, call us to the table. You know, let's sit at the table, let's have a conversation. Because there might be some things that we probably have done to you personally that we just didn't see, you know? But if you bring us to the table and let's have a conversation, then you can hear all points of views of how to fix it up, you know? And typically, once again, I love Lakeisha, she crash out, you know?
That's the second time you said that.
Yeah, she crash out.
She
And so, but when she crashes out, I always be like, well, Keisha, we're going to have to sit down with this person because we're going to have to have a bigger conversation, you know? And I enjoy those moments because then now we're getting deeper into what really impacted you. Because it could be the smallest thing, but you're just making it this big situation. And that's what you needed? Oh, here you go. That's all you wanted? Here you go.
Sometimes
Like,
an apology is really just an acknowledgement.
yeah.
And accountability. It's like the AAA. You know what I'm saying? It really, since we're talking about AARP, you know, it's the AAA, you know? You have to acknowledge, you have to apologize, and you have to be accountable. And sometimes the accountability looks different. For me, I think the hardest part of navigating community is when folks don't know what they want for accountability. They be either just screaming, but it's like, okay, so what do you want to rectify this? And there's like no answer. And it's like, okay, so you haven't really sat down with this situation to figure out what's going to make you feel whole in this. I can't figure it out for you. I can suggest some things, but if none of those answers or solutions land for you, you have to be able to have the power and the discernment to say, no, this is what I'm looking for, and this is how I want to move forward. Because growth and evolution and transformation happens at all levels of that.
That's real.
Not just in support, but also in relationship, because this is a relationship. People use community so loosely, in a sense, like, oh, this is my community. Well, shit, not everybody in the community like
you. That's real. And that's something I deal with all the time too. Like, you know, I'd be like, a lot of folks probably don't like me, but at the same time I'm about my business, you know?
No, they gotta respect you.
Yeah, I'm about my business. And so, and it's okay to not like me, right? Because I'm not in this work to be liked. You know, I'm in this work to serve.
If you were, then you wouldn't be doing the work.
Yeah, that part.
Let's be
clear.
clear.
What I mean? And so when folks be like, well, Curtis, you don't come out to the events, and then I'm like, sometimes because I'm doing something else.
Or
you know?
I'm tired.
Or that too. Like, it's okay to rest, right?
Rest is an act of resistance. It really is. And because you move around so much, I think sometimes leaders have expectations placed on them that they don't even realize are set.
I would say 7 days a week. I'm working 7 days a week. Literally, I would say 12 hours days, you know. Like when shout out to my partner. I want to give him praise too in this conversation because when I'm at home, I'm locked in, you know, and I know sometimes I don't spend as much quality time as I should because I'm locked in because, oh, wow, this week, like around last year this week, I quit my full-time job.
Oh, wow.
And gave myself fully to the foundation.
Congratulations.
And so when I'm locked in, my thing is like, honey, I gotta eat, you know? I have to eat. Like, I gave everything up to be in this position, and I have to survive, right? And that one grant or that one submission might be my survival or the end of my survival, right? Because as a nonprofit, we're not getting frequent dollars, right? We have to fundraise, we have to get grants, we have to do all these things to make sure that we're living up to the expectation. And I think that for me, I have to lock in. I have to lock in 7 days a week, you know? And that's through our initiatives, that's through our youth ambassadors, that's through our mentorship program, that's through our reentry program, that's where all these things are happening. And guess what? It's one band, one sound, me. You know, and I have to make sure that the train's moving. And when the train don't move, I got to figure out why is it not moving?
Right.
Why are we stuck? How do we get to the next level? And so I'm always reevaluating and evaluating my current initiatives. Like, hey, how can we plug in here? Do we have a food destigmatization program for our seniors? Why is this not moving yet? Let's get this train moving. Who do we need to put in place? Hey, why we don't have more youth teens in our mentorship program? Talk to my staff there. Let's move this train because this is what we are here to do. Move the train, you know, and make sure our people are being served. I keep on saying that, making sure our people are being served.
while also serving yourself to have a roof over your head. Boston is not inexpensive by any means. And I'm glad that you're bringing this up because a lot of folks, I think, glamorize leadership. They see all the accolades and the resume and all the press that comes with being who you are, but don't realize that there's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of sacrifice within that. Sometimes you can be in the same home as your partner and not see your partner all day. There are times where you're not eating properly because you're on the road the entire day.
Well, you can't exercise.
You can't exercise, girl. Listen, please don't even do me right now, okay? Because you know we were talking about that before we even got up in this space, okay? I was like, it's giving a little hefty. You know what I'm saying? Stuff a little tight. You feel what I'm saying?
No,
but
it's
those
real,
are all
though.
real
It's real.
things,
It's real.
and like we have to also like balance our own mental health and all of that. When you quit your job to do your purpose work, it is sometimes, most often than not, way more work than what you've ever done for any full-time job that you've ever worked for somebody else. Working for yourself is self-motivating. It can be defecating, is that a word? Yes, it can be, it doesn't come with applause. A lot of this is selfless, it's selfless work, but it's also thankless. You don't always get somebody being like, Curtis, you did a good job.
No, you got to pat yourself on the back.
You're doing a good job. You got to be your biggest cheerleader for yourself to keep it moving. And like we named earlier, you have to have people that are in your circle that not only remember who you are and where you came from, but can help you get to where you're trying to go.
And I think, and I'm thankful for my friends in that moment, because my friends, I always say to folks, like when I'm feeling like I'm just in a dark place and I'm just feeling defeated from the work, I can always count on my friends and be like, come on, let's get it. Like, let's go. We're going to Slade's. We're going here. We're going there.
Best fried chicken and fried okra, fried hard in the city, period.
And so I always
shout out
think
to Kyle and the team over there.
Yeah, shout out to Kyle and
the new ownership, because that place has seen a lot.
A lot of transitions with owners. And so like I thank my friends for those moments of like, yo, I know that they got me, and I have a collective of brothers that got me too. And they're not gay either. Like they're straight men. And I'm just like, they're like, yo, let's get it, you know? I grew up around heterosexual, straight, cisgendered folks, you know? And so that still carries me a little bit more. So when people look at me, they be like, but you don't ever come off as gay. What does come off as gay mean?
First of all.
But secondly, I'm around these men who really, who's my brothers, like who got me, like 110 grand. I remember when I lived in Miami and I was struggling in Miami, they had me. And to a point where like, they're like, what you need? Huh? Do your thing. Even when I moved back to Boston, they had me. And so I think that it's really important that you, like you said, surround yourself with folks who really got you and who can hold you accountable, who can hold you up when you're feeling like you're about to fall back and fall down into a dark place. And I would say they had me.
And artists, tap in, because I literally had this conversation with our last guest where we were talking about, you know, just being in the community and having community friends. That's cool. But who are the people that grew up with you, that knew you before you even
got to where
you are? That's so important and pivotal to your legacy. Speaking of legacy, like Curtis, your impact, blues impact, is undeniable, first and foremost. So I hope that you are taking a second to really just soak in what you're doing. Because you literally named, I think, every creative and leader in the city where it's like, okay, what's next? I need your homework to be, when you leave here.
That's the homework.
Yes, homework. So listen, your work to do, sir, is to really just take a moment to reflect, even if it's 5 minutes. Sit in silence, think creator, and just really understand what your impact has been. I think that's also gonna give you encouragement and motivation to keep going. But I need you to soak that in a little bit and give yourself the flowers that you've sowed all over this city. It is not easy work of what you're doing. Your documentary is absolutely beautiful. What Blue has built over this time frame and what it's continuing and will build for years and years to come is so important. But we need you to understand and process the things that you've already done.
Yeah. And I also want to shout out Mecklen's. I know he probably, when he see this, probably like, you shot me out on this. You was talking about gay shit, you shot me out on this.
We'll clip it for him.
Because, working in all the areas that I have worked before, I still work with some of the clients that I worked with before, right?
Wow.
And they still have my number where they can call me if they're in crisis and be like, yo, C, there's times where I offered these people to sleep on my couch, And so, like, for me, it's just not like I'm at this job and, okay, when I leave everything there. Some of those folks still follow me because it's the authentic relationship that we built, right? Beyond this, like, my job. No, I really care for you beyond just this job. So how can I get you there? And I spoke about something earlier too when you talked about like your leadership and like how did you foster this leadership? I think of one of the reasons why I started Blue Foundation too was because when I worked at BMC, I had a client who was shot in the head, and he was blind. He survived though,
Wow.
survives. And that's God.
Absolutely.
And
Wow.
I remember everyone's having a hard time trying to get him to like connect, trying to get him to connect. And my boss was like, that's your client, you figure that out. And I don't want to show his name, but Ashby, shout out to Ashby. And I remember getting up every day, going into his room. Depression's a mother effer,
Absolutely.
And I remember every day going to his room, open up the shades, get up!
Yep.
Get up, let's move, what you need, let's get it, bro, let's get it. You want some music, what you want, And we got him to this place of, like, healing, I guess I call it. A place of healing. And that story from how he was and how he got to a place of healing, he even went to like a, I guess, school for the blind, right? To try to learn how to navigate now.
Probably
And
Perkins.
Perkins, probably, and from that experience, we made it to the White Pages. If anybody know about the White Pages, is a doctor's dictionary, basically, of what, how can I say it? What are some methodologies that you could use to help heal your clients,
Yes.
And I remember being in those White Pages, but never being mentioned in those White Pages. And I think for me, it woke me up because when I said to the folks who wrote the White Pages, I said, that's my story. That's my client. I put those practices in place to get him to where he was at. Y'all didn't do that. And the fact that y'all didn't put me in the White Pages showed me that, oh, y'all was just using me,
Yeah.
And that really motivated me to say, start your own.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna waste, they're gonna run you dry.
Yes,
And then
drain you.
when they drain you, no use for you no more. And for me, it was just like, nah.
Get somebody else to do it.
But still, me
Get
and
somebody
Ashby,
else to do it.
Me and Ashby is still close to this day,
Love that.
And I'm like, yo, but they would not talk about that. People will never talk about that,
Of course not.
And so I think that it's really important that folks tell their stories and really live up to their stories because there's a lot of unhidden gems that folks have done that these agencies won't talk about. They'll look beyond it and go to the next person and say, hey, can you do something different? And I'm just like, no, that's my story. That's my story. That's my legacy. That helped this young person shape his future, And so, yeah, I'll stop there.
I mean, we know, especially in our history, the erasure of anything remarkable that we've done or the cover-ups, if you will, of the things that we've done. Intellectual property
That part
is so very important. Everything that you are thinking about in your mind that you give to somebody else, as artists, when we think about it in an art form, it's like, well, it no longer belongs to us, but it forever belongs to us. It's for people to consume, but that doesn't mean that they own it because it came from somewhere. And I think that that's important. I could literally talk to you all day.
That part.
I literally want to ask you 2 final questions prior to us concluding the interview, but I first want to give you your flowers again.
Appreciate you.
No, I love you for
Love
real.
you too,
like
friend.
you already know. You
Yes.
already know. Like we kiki outside of here. Sometimes too much. We be telling each other the truth about things. And I appreciate just your impact in the community, but also your impact on me. Like if it wasn't for you, there is a lot of different connections in this city that I definitely would not have had. There are definitely roles in this community that I'm now able to confidently do, and it was because you gave me the opportunity and saw something in me and trusted in me to do it. You've always been diplomatic, you've always been fair, and you've always been willing to have a conversation with everybody around you, not just me, but I've watched you navigate that. So when you're talking about your story and your journey here, everything you're saying is super authentic because I've watched it, I've witnessed it with my own eyes. With that being said, what do you feel like your legacy is right now, and what do you want for Blue's legacy to be?
I think my legacy right now is to protect our young queer generation. I think that folks are becoming their authentic selves so young. That one, we never seen that happen before, right? But two, that's the precious joy we have to protect because those folks would be the first targets, to be eliminated,
Absolutely.
right?
Wow.
And not being eliminated by the government, but be eliminated by their own people, right? And so I think that when I think of legacy, I think of that word I use, what's next? You know, like how can I do something next? Like what's next? But I always think about planting that seed because that's the legacy that's gonna live, right? And I talked to you earlier about how I built that playground, how I started that teen police academy, how I healed that young person and got him back to a place of healing after he had this traumatic experience, you know, and I think about another young person, the McLenn's young man I spoke about, how he was shot 15 times and he got an award, his first award that he ever received, and his mama was like, "Go ahead, baby." She couldn't even believe it, you know. And so I think about when I think of my legacy consists of planting seeds, and watching them bloom. You know, because when they bloom, I don't know if I gotta be here for it to bloom, but I know that they're blooming somewhere, you know? That's my legacy. And then when I think of the foundation legacy, Blue Foundation legacy, I always say that when I'm gone or when I'm ready to give up Blue, I want a leader in place like me, that's ambitious like me, that is a creator like me, that thinks beyond just what's in front of you, but what's behind the scenes, you know? So when I think of Blue Legacy, I think of a hub. I think of a hub. You know, we're working on something right now. And I don't know if I want to say it out loud, but we're working on something.
Manifest it. I mean, unless you want to protect it.
We're going to protect it because we're working on it, you know? And what we're working on is something bigger than just the foundation. It's for community, you know? And I always thought about like, when I ever get a space or a place to be able to do our work out of, not just have it us, but more community, bring them in. Because everyone needs a home,
They do.
you know? And so looking at us beyond just, okay, you want a home for Blue? No, we want a home for everybody. How does that look? And so we're working on that hub. And so that's going to be that legacy. When we create that hub, that's going to be the legacy that lives within our city.
I love this because I feel like what you're building, what you have already built, is going to be replicated in a lot of different parts of the world.
We already been asked to do it in Tampa.
Look at
We
you.
already been asked to do it in Tampa. Somebody from here, the city is moving to Tampa, and they said, they straight called me and said, listen, I don't want to leave Blue. How can I replicate it out here in Tampa? And I said, what do you mean? It was like, I'll do anything it takes to get something like what you guys started in our city out in Tampa. And I said, let's have a bigger conversation. But we already been talking about how do we get to different chapters around the states, you know, but being mindful that we don't want to take up other people's space, you know, because there are programs like ours out in these other cities. We just got to tap in.
Yeah, I think you guys do a really good job with collaboration and doing your homework and your research. I love that for y'all. I also believe that, like, again, Boston Black Pride, even just watching this year roll out and how you all tapped into different artists from different spaces.
Different cities, different states.
You know, I know Boston really doesn't like when you do stuff like that because they're like, well, why do you need to get other people from other spaces when you have so many artists here? However, and I'm going to say this looking directly at the camera, some of y'all don't get out of your city.
That part.
Some of y'all stay in your city, you do not
That
travel.
That part.
So how are you supposed to understand what other art and what other resources and what other networks are out there when you just stay where you're at and you're comfortable? Now, I understand traveling is a privilege, so no one's gonna name or get on you for not doing so because it does take money. At the same time, just getting out of your city and crossing the border is so important. Rhode Island is right there.
Yeah.
Connecticut is right there. New York is right there. Philly, Baltimore. These are all spaces where you don't have to jump on a train or a plane.
Right.
You could literally take a bus. Now, is it gonna, you're gonna be on that bus for a little while, but it is accessible. And if, in fact, you do wanna travel and you don't feel like you have the resources, that is what your community is for. People will invest in you to get outside of yourself to see what's outside.
So for Black Pride this year, CJ, one of our Black Pride coordinators.
Love CJ down.
Yeah, one of our Black Pride coordinators. He was so passionate about, you know, getting a Airbnb to make sure that folks who are coming from out of town has a place to stay.
Lodging is important, another expense.
And his thing was, I don't care, you know, if they pay for their way to get here, we house them. You know, and I enjoyed that methodology of thinking like, okay, great, you know, let's house them. But what I seen this year for Black Pride, especially for the artists who came from different states, is that they wanted to be here.
Yeah,
they wanted to perform. We had people from Detroit, we had people from Dallas, Atlanta, like so many places that traveled to just do
DC.
this queer shit, you know?
Yeah. This gay shit.
This gay shit, you know? And I think that for me, it showed me that we need more.
Yes.
Right? We need more spaces like this. And the fact that they did it here in Boston where they talk about there's no black people in Boston.
Listen.
We need more. You know, we need more.
That narrative needs to stop because at the end of the day, we do exist. We are here. We're not a monolith.
We are a majority.
Black. Absolutely.
We're a majority.
We have the
We're not a
biggest
minority.
diverse black and brown numbers out of most states, low key. We also have the biggest Haitian population here in Boston. So you can't tell me that there's no black people that exist here because we definitely are here.
The problem is they're going to the wrong parts of the city.
We're
right?
still siloed, but I feel like things like, you know, Boston Black Pride, BAMS Fest, Boston Wild Black, Embrace Boston are the Theater Offensive are spaces that are really, really congregating together and saying, okay, what do we need to do to not only collaborate with each other and help each other with the amplification of what we do, but also bring in other people from other conglomerates and institutions and organizations to build on top of that.
Now that you say that, you know, we're working together with BAMS Fest, Embrace, Rocks Film Festival, and we Move. I think it's called We Move. And what we're doing is we're creating something called North by Northwest.
Love that instead of South by Southwest.
Yeah.
I see what you did there with the name.
And so what we're doing is that we're coming together as a collective to show community that we do have black things happening here. And so we're looking at it next year. We're going to be doing like the June type of thing and compacting everyone's events in there. But I say that to say that we're creating something, right? And I was blessed to be a part of the conversation with Embrace Boston, BAMS Fest, because I always want to sit down with Kat and say, what up, Kat? You know, but now that they brought us to the table, I'm like, we're working, but we're working, we're having conversations, we're trying to figure out what's not working, what's working, and we're talking to each other, which is the main part. We're talking to each other and say, how do we support each other's work?
Because at the end of the day, let's be clear, Boston for a very long time, it felt like it could only be one.
Yeah.
Artists felt like that as well. Like there can only be one. No, there's a whole bunch. I feel like that's what creates more opportunities and platforms for expansion for artists and for organizations like all of the ones that you named. Not only that, but it does feel, even though that may not be the intention, competitive when, especially in a month of June, where it's nice out and everybody can get permits.
Not the permits.
I had to put that in there because it is hard, child.
It is hard to get
listen, it is
permits.
hard.
It is.
That's a whole educational course within and of itself. Somebody needs to
But
create
we
the
can't,
workshop.
not to cut you off, but we can't limit ourselves to, right? Because we talk about Boston, right? But we have Malden, we have Cambridge.
Oh, yeah.
We have, I think, what I'm trying to say is that
The state of Massachusetts.
yeah, we have to take over.
And I think that is so possible. When I go to spaces like, and y'all know I be out here traveling, when I be going to spaces like Worcester, when I go to Springfield, Massachusetts, they have a pulse. They understand like what that collaborative effort means. Lynn, Salem, Swampscott. These are spaces,
that we
even
need to take
Concord,
up. We
even
need to take
Concord,
up. We need
Massachusetts,
to
be
take
doing
up.
some stuff. And people are like, what? I'm surprised. No. You have to expand. Arts and culture is the pulse that moves us forward to progression.
Right. I agree.
We can't be progressive and say that we're liberated and we're exercising our freedoms if we're not collaborating and we're not moving into spaces and taking up space. I understand you had named something earlier, like we got to realize like we don't want to go into other spaces to take up their space. I want us to reframe that statement where it's like, what would it look like if we all took up space? Not necessarily I'm coming into your house and I'm just going to move all my stuff into your building. How do we make this a co-ed, co-collaborative space, a co-working space where we can all get what we need to get done and receive all the things that we need in community with each other, because that's what community to me means.
Right.
People who are usually collaborating at the top ain't fighting at the bottom.
That part.
Just saying.
That part. That's real.
Just saying.
That's real.
Lastly, Curtis, if you had a megaphone to speak to the world, especially to Black creatives, leaders, and the LGBT plus individuals facing obstacles, what would your message be?
My message would be to Black creators and folks who are trying to take up space is be patient with yourself. I think that, we work in a place of like we want to see fast results, but I think that it takes time and it takes patience to build out to those results. And so I think if I'm thinking about Black creators and how to liberate them, I would say be patient with yourself. Because I think that's something I had to learn, to be patient with myself. Because like I said, I move at a fast pace, and sometimes it's like, be patient with yourself. You'll see it come through, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and especially as curators in art and culture folks, their artistry is the one thing they want to show. But I think that if you're looking to use your artistry as your form of employment, be patient with yourself. Because you can use your artistry as your form of employment, but you must strategize, you must plot. I always say plot, plan, execute. That's my thing, plot, plan, execute. Because if that's what you want to use as your tool to survival, be patient with yourself, because it will all come together.
So y'all need to think of it as like the loan, not PPP, but PPE. Plot, plan, and execute.
Yeah.
First of all, that was absolutely beautiful. I love all of the gems that you just dropped here. Thank you for your continued success. Thank you for your dedication and devotion to our community. Thank you for amplifying LGBTQIA plus individuals. Thank you again for also merging the worlds that are around us and diversifying, and really, I know DEI is like they want us to DIE with that, but you are diversifying and ensuring that everybody is included and everybody is equitable as well. Thank you for still spending those nights looking for funding and seeking funding opportunities. Thank you for keeping folks alive. Thank you for keeping people alive, that they don't have to survive, that they can actually thrive. You provide an opportunity for that.
Thank you.
You and Keisha. So thank you so much for everything that you have done with Blue, with the mentorship programs, with YPP, with all the cop stuff, because the screaming cops, screaming cops. I would love, as a personal ask, to see you all move into like the political sector on how do we navigate young voices into the political climate to know that they need to vote.
So, if I may, we do touch on it, but we don't have a 501c4, which gives you opportunities to talk politics and things within the nonprofit sector. And so we do lean towards our partners and our partnerships that has 501c4s to see.
Like Glass and things like that, yeah?
Yeah, like, hey, how can we tap in?
Beautiful.
Because I think that, especially in this political climate that we're in right now, the mayoral race, but also the city council race for D7, like, it's crazy.
So I'm gonna see you on the 30th in the Stratton Theater for the mayoral election
Yeah,
campaign.
sure.
Okay.
Thank you for putting me on, because I didn't know about it.
What?
I didn't. And that's the problem, right? Who's getting the information and how the information is getting to the right people,
Because
right?
you need to be in that room.
That part.
We have the 3 mayoral candidates going back to back,
Oh, wow.
where we can ask questions from the
I'll be
public.
there.
So
Say
you
less.
need to be there because you are definitely somebody who is pushing that.
Yeah, say less.
pushing
I'll
the
be there.
polls. I just want to thank you again for being here and
Thank
for all
you.
the
I appreciate
work.
y'all.
Of course, and y'all, that concludes this episode with Curtis Santos of Narratives in Black. Like, share, and subscribe on all channels, and we'll see you on the next episode. I'm your host, Amanda Shea. Love y'all.
Peace.